As always, one company that you still haven't disappointed. Let's face it, Bezier Games still has not disappointed ever. Last year, the fantastic Suburbia really made a few ripples, and this year you are Subdivision is again making a few ripples here at Spiel, and the Castles of the Mad King Ludwig is also selling like hotcakes. Really, really well indeed.
Very low on both. It's Saturday morning, and we were almost out of both of those in English. And we're very low on them in German, too. So they've done incredibly well for us. Our booth has been packed the whole week so far, and I'm really, really tired.
I don't blame you at all. You've been working like mental. Right, let's talk about Subdivision. Tell me something about the game. How does it play?
So Subdivision is thematically very similar to Suburbia, but the gameplay is actually quite different. What happens is each player ends up getting a hand of tiles that represent zones, and those zones get placed on your subdivision board, and your subdivision board is constrained kind of in a hex area. And your goal is to fill that up with zones, with parks, with lakes, schools, roads, and to make it as efficient and as attractive as possible. The interesting thing about this, unlike Suburbia, it's a drafting game. So you're going to place one of your zones, and you're going to pass the ones you don't use to the player on your left. And then you're going to place another one, etc. Every time you place one, you activate existing zones that you place next to. So instead of getting extra points for things you're placing next to, like in Suburbia, you're actually activating them, which means they're building parks, or they're building lakes, or roads, or schools, or sidewalks. And each of those gives you points or money for different sorts of things. The game goes very quickly because everyone plays simultaneously, and you can play 1 to 4 people in a box, but you could also, it's kind of cool, sort of like Take It Easy. You can have multiple boxes and play, you can have 8, 12, 16 people playing at one time, which is really cool. And the experience is going to be different. You can actually pass tiles all the way around the table, which is really cool.
That sounds fantastic, because it really sounds like you've taken the theme and done something completely different than Suburbia, and made it sounds like a little bit more accessible as well.
Yeah, it's definitely more accessible. There's a lot less bookkeeping. All the scoring is done at the end of the game. So you wait to the end of the game, then you figure out what the score is. And the designer who did this, Luke Hedren, it was his first game that he did. And we worked with him. When he brought it to us, we were like, wow, this could really fit in kind of the Suburbia world of this. And this is kind of the planning stage where you're setting things out. And you don't work with individual buildings like you do in Suburbia, but actual zones. And you're kind of creating a park area and a school area and those sorts of things. And it has a different feel to it, but it's still very compelling. It's a little puzzly in a way of trying to optimize and trying to figure out how you're going to fit things in. But definitely a lot of fun. It plays half hour to 45 minutes. And there's even a bunch of different scenarios, kind of a preset sets of tiles to give you a different experience, like one with a river going right through the middle, or one we call Central Park that has a park in the center that you have to build around, and all sorts of scenarios like that to keep the game fresh and adds a lot of replayability.
You have released some expansions for Suburbia already. I presume the Subdivision will also see the same attention being paid to?
At a certain point, yeah, definitely. I mean, we don't have anything announced at this point, but there's no reason not to have an expansion to it.
Well, that sounds like a very expandable game, really, so it would make sense to do it. Now, tell me about the Castles of the Mad King Ludwig, because although the title sounds pretty crazy, but the game looks very serious.
It's a little serious. It's fun. Each player gets to build their own castle, and you actually are building it room by room. So each room, there are different shaped rooms, and you're putting the rooms together and next to each other, and you'll get bonuses for having certain rooms next to other rooms, and penalties for things like if you put a bowling alley next to the nap room, you get a penalty, which makes sense because you're trying to take a nap and someone is bowling next door. That's a problem. But we tried to do it in kind of the spirit of King Ludwig, and King Ludwig was very eccentric, and he built things because he thought they were cool, not because they were efficient or he wanted to defend the country. He just wanted a great looking, fun castle with the rooms that, for things he liked. Like he loved opera, he loved knights, things like that. He loved medieval style castles, and so he built a medieval style castle even though he lived in the 19th century. And so you have that feeling. Mechanically, it's also quite different in that one player every turn is a master builder, and they set the prices for the rooms for that round. The other players pay that master builder to build. So the master builder has to figure out what do the players want and to price them as high as possible, but not too high, so we can extract as much money from the other players. And at the end of that turn, he also gets to build a room, but he only builds what's left over. So he also has to figure out what are they going to take, and how do I make sure that the room I want is priced high enough that they don't take it, but low enough that I can still afford it when it comes to me.
That sounds really different.
It's very, very different. It's very different than Suburbia or Subdivision. It's a totally different type of game, but it's still tiling and building. And the one thing it does have in common with Suburbia that a lot of people like is when you're done playing, you have a castle that has its own personality. You can have a castle that has lots of dungeon-type basement rooms and it's dark. You can have, there's one of the games we played not that long ago with this big burly guy. He made a nice Disney fairy tale princess castle with lots of bedrooms and relaxing rooms. They were purple and a terrace garden and that sort of thing. And each castle has this own unique feel to it.
Please tell me that we can build game rooms within the castle.
There are definitely game rooms. In fact, there's actually a couple. Castles have a lot of sitting rooms or, those sorts of rooms. And in fact, in the castle, if you look closely, you'll actually see some games laid out on some of the tables that are in there.
Fantastic. That sounds sounds brilliant. Those games, I know obviously they are here available as Spiel. Are they also available on distribution already so people can buy them for Christmas? For Christmas?
Definitely. They're going through distribution now. I know that in the UK, I know one of the distributors has actually picked up some cases here. They're going to have them available through parts of Europe. And in the US, they'll be available starting, I believe, the first week in November.
So just on time for people to actually put them in their Christmas stocking fillers. And last thing, I wanted to ask you about Ultimate Werewolf Daybreak. How is that doing? Because it's looking absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. So One Night Ultimate Werewolf was announced last year at Essen. It started selling in January. It's sold amazingly well. It's outsold every other game we've ever done. It's almost sold as many copies as the original Werewolf in total we've had over the last 7 years. Not quite, but it's getting there. It'll get there easily next year. Just crazy selling well. And this new sequel to it, which is both an expansion and a standalone, you can combine it with the original game or play it by itself, has all sorts of new characters. And one of my favorite attributes is that there's no plain villagers. You'll never, if you play with just that game, you'll never be a plain old villager with kind of nothing to do. Every role has something to do, and you're always going to be engaged in the outcome because you've actually contributed in some way.
I like the sound of that. Best of luck for the rest of the show. I know that you're going to be selling out probably by the end of today because today is the mental day at Spiel. So it should be quite fantastic. Many congratulations on the games. I look forward to seeing what goodness you bring next year.
Thank you very much. Great, thank you.